So when it comes to isekai, I've seen my fair share of wacky and wild ideas, from blushing menu goddesses to being reincarnated as a vending machine, supposedly. But I will admit, seeing a sword that is usually butt-ass naked in the general scenes that it's in, but seeing it, go from being sheathed to just enjoying the comfort of that, but then how quickly it can, open up to be an ease of access, but then how these, invisible hands cover it up and how it just comes across as, an indecent exposure scene. I've seen a lot in isekai, but the fact that they can still surprise me with goofy scenes such as those, or just insane premises that you're like, just when you think you've seen everything isekai has to offer, they pop up with a new idea that just is so absurd you can't help but look at it. And I think the general idea of reincarnated as a sword, you think it's not going to be anything special, but damn, I'm 4 episodes into this one, and I think it's pretty special. I really don't think you see a lot of father-daughter duos in this type of genre, and usually when you have anything that could maybe be seen as that, there's always the what if, because anime does like to throw in that, oh, what if they go a little more than just that relationship. But the thing that helps a show like this is that it is a sword, right? Yes, it was a person turned into a sword, but it's not like there's any sexual body parts there. The most this sword has that you could say is human-like is the eyes, a voice maybe, and the ghostly hands. But the ghostly hands, there's never anything that comes across as creepy with that. So in return, you just get this really wholesome story of this girl that lost everything, was enslaved, suffered, and now is on this quest for power, doesn't want to run away. Yes, there is points where you do have to turn around, and I'm glad that there was that in this episode. Yes, we get to see her just not be the scared little kitten. She's kind of grew up to be a pretty badass kid, all things considered. And the fact that she killed all the goblins that caused such a ruckus last week, but after discovering the dungeon that is going to cause an even bigger catastrophe, she was convinced to turn around and go home because she was so winded and wounded. We didn't just get that scene of, because she's the main character, she can just keep pushing herself, believing in herself, and she'll never have to learn any hard facts. Yes, she might not lose any battles in this show, or maybe suffer defeats that could be life or death. But the difference is, there is the difference of, yes, I want to see you rise above and become powerful, but also, you are still a kid, you gotta turn around, go home, and it's kind of past your bedtime sort of a thing. But to see this episode and just the bonds throughout it, I mean, there's literally a scene in this episode where she takes this sword, her teacher, her sensei, her master here, and she bathes with it to clean it. And it's probably one of the most wholesome bathing scenes in anime probably this year has seen. Nothing about it comes across as anything other than he gets embarrassed and he's like, well, that's a little awkward. But there's never anything that comes across as he's a perverted sword or anything. Instead, he genuinely feels like he's this girl's new dad, right? Adoptive father in a lot of ways. And the way he's looking after her and caring for her and, really learning things alongside her, but also teaching her everything he can along the way. It really goes a long way to make you root for these duo, and Fran is just such an adorable, violent bundle of energy that never comes across as a psychopath, but rather, the things she kills, she's doing so because they're going to kill her or others. It's not like she goes after and wants to hurt people, but those who do want to hurt people, she has no problem cutting apart like fools. And that's what makes her a very rootable character, and to learn as much as we did in this episode, they gave us a pretty decent history lesson of the gods, the goddesses, and just how everything kind of came to be, which was a very fun lesson because of how they stylized it in an almost storybook fashion. The goddess of chaos, some people saying good, some people saying bad. It's obvious why people would have a mixed reception, because some things that look like chaos could actually be the whole reason adventurers get to do anything they do, but obviously there's a lot to it that makes it a little more complex and not just so black and white, but rather a little gray. The whole concept of how goblins came to be and just the mechanics of this world just are very interesting without being so, here's an info dump and you just kind of get bored, but rather there's enough there to make you say, oh, that's interesting, and that explains a lot of what we've seen up to this point, but never lasts longer than needed. So we understand that this world is more than just a copy and paste rehash, but there is a history to it without ever becoming dry and boring. And just the mechanics and the whole idea that she killed 130 goblins, she ended up gaining a skill in this episode that, as we saw at the end of the episode, goblins literally run away from her now, because from their point of view, she looks like a demon, and obviously everyone else around her doesn't know why they're running away, but I mean, quickly after you're walking on thin air and then launching fire magic and doing all these different things, it's pretty clear everyone around her is saying like, holy shit, this kid is better than any of us combined. And just how quickly the tides turn after them getting ambushed at the entrance of this dungeon to then quickly how she just opens a path, and yes, they end in a dramatic cliffhanger that this is the biggest and most dangerous threat, but it's probably going to be pretty damn cool to see what they're going to do, because the first 3 minutes of this episode, give or take, was just her cutting apart goblins left and right. And it's interesting how they go about gore in this show, because it is gory in a way, but the way they almost, like, the way the bodies separate, it almost comes across as if you've seen any show that had, like, shadow creatures, and the way, like, shadow bodies would kind of split apart, like, the way the meat and the bones and the blood kind of separate on these drawings, it doesn't come across as overly gory, but you can tell what they're referencing without it being like, oh, this is why they get around censoring and things like that, right? Just a really solid production, and I love learning just even like the blacksmith stuff, right? Just seeing how he uses like a crystal, and they're like, oh shit, that's actually pretty cheap, like 10,000 to repair something that was very badly damaged. But then the whole idea of like, the more you repair it, the more you'll need to use these crystals, so next time it'll be 30,000, right? Everything about this show just, it has exactly what an isekai fan wants to see. It's not the bare minimum that you see a lot of these shows do. It actually has a unique pairing between these two characters. The person reincarnated is more of a support / weapon and, honestly, father figure. And the girl who suffered for so long, you know, she's pretty discriminated against, and just the idea of where her people can go, especially given that we know eventually she'll have to evolve, given, like, that's just the natural course of how quickly she's already leveled up over such a short amount of time, right? I really like Reincarnated as Sword. It's such a fun show. It has such a great pairing. It's violent without being overly edgy, but it also has, like, this very sweet and soft side that just makes it an oddly wholesome slice of life with a father-daughter duo, but then also one of the more violent isekai action shows you can see in any given anime season, and it's a really solid production. It actually feels like there's a good production value there. You can tell it doesn't feel rushed in the slightest, and I mean, we're 4 episodes in. If we were going to expect this show to start dipping, this would be, like last week, this week, episode 3 and 4, those are usually the episodes that have the most visual inconsistencies, or, you know, you start to see like, oh yeah, we're definitely gonna suffer at the end of this season. But honestly, this one feels well refined, and I'm really excited to see where they're gonna go, because we have a lot of characters on screen, a lot of goblins, a lot of new creatures we'll probably fight along the way, and just the way she's quickly rising up the ranks. I mean, one of the things I really liked about shows like Black Summoner is just the whole escalation of like the ranks in the guilds, and that's what I like to see in a show like this as well. I think it's kind of funny though when it comes to the person she beat in order to actually get her initial like acceptance into the guild. He's just like so dumbfounded at all the things that happen, but then you have like the guild leader being like, with what you've already done, like it'd be unacceptable to keep you at your rank currently because you're literally better than so many others as is. And it'll be interesting to see, because I just imagine, like, given what she'll probably do in this mission, I wouldn't be shocked if she gets, like, an even bigger promotion, or that temporary promotion becomes permanent, because who the hell wouldn't promote someone who just did everything we just seen, right? And it's also really nice that, you know, the concept of having a character as a sword, there's actually mechanics to that sword, like, you know, feeling relieved when put in, like a holder of any sort, whether a stone pedestal or something you can wear on your back. Like, it actually feels like they're thinking things through with a very basic premise at face value, but turns out to be way better than any of us really thought possible. Thoughts and feelings on episode 4, what did you think, and what's your favorite point of the show so far? Do let me know. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.